that would give it the most legs,
Yeah.
so that maybe you could combine all those things in an
Mhm.
astrobiology. Like you can do the field work and the research report or the minor thesis or whatever. Maybe you could put it in a Bachelor of Science somewhere.
Summer or something, whatever would that could target the Ladakh field season.
Mm.
Absolutely, and that's a separate discussion. I need to fill you in,
Yeah.
all of you in on Ladakh as well, because there've been some positive developments. But we'll save that for after the class. I see we're
Yeah.
at 10 a.m. So very warm welcome to everyone joining in for the final class of Introduction to Astrobiology online course. Many of you are joining in live, and others will be watching this recording later on. So perhaps before I start, I will offer the stage to Ms. Annalie, who had a few notes to share on the drawings that have come in and a few points for everyone.
Yes, just a quick 2 minutes, everybody. So we've extended the deadline. If you haven't had a chance to look at last week's workshop, where pretty much you're doing the drawing and I'm doing the talking, the link only went up yesterday. So it's there for you. So what's happened with that is that I've received so many space-related works of art / objects of art that I've kind of broadened the field a little bit. So I guess, once you've seen the workshop, you'll get more idea. And the brief is on the Google Classroom. However, you know what? I'm always really interested in, how imaginative work is part of your daily life and how you would like to take that with you when you go to another planet. So for example, Afshin sent me some photographs of her herb garden, and gardening is an incredibly creative, satisfying, stimulating thing. So, you can be as inventive as you want. Thanks so much for some of the beautiful work you're sending in. And Jenny Blake's got a hand up because she's going to send me something too, I'm sure.
Oh, well, yes, I would like to, especially if there's an extension.
There is.
After listening to the talk and the discussion about the importance and vitality of having art and culture in our daily life and how that contributes to mental health and innovation and stimulation. Anyway, I started looking online and getting distracted a little bit, and I had an idea that, okay, maybe some of you will think it's silly or crazy, but I thought, why, there's discussion of which plants to grow in space or on a settlement. I see Afshin already smiling. But anyway, so in some plants, like a spider plant, for example, a common office plant, apparently has a higher respiration rate, so actually helps purify the air around you, and so it's a good office plant. And then we've talked about grasses that grow in space, and maybe they're not super yummy to eat, but they grow well and they have high fiber content or something. But what about working on grasses for habitat, space or planetary otherwise, that we could use for basket weaving? Okay, now it sounds silly, but basket weaving on the habitat. So you grow a consumable that's renewable. You have to be artistic. You could bring your cultural, I was thinking of Native Americans or other, some tribal patterns in these baskets that, or you could create your own. And then you use them to carry things around the hab. And then when they degrade, you just recycle them. I thought what do you think?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a really great idea. So I think all that, we will make functional form and to mark our position in the landscape. So I remember in the desert in Utah, our Australian engineer, he would collect the clay and he'd sift it and filter it, and then he'd make a coil pot, and then he'd put the gemstones that he'd find on the ground in the pot, and then we'd use the pot. So, I think, it makes sense. It's a practical thing. It's a really practical thing. The grasses would be a really great idea. So, yeah, look, anything like that you could draw, or you could, even if you don't want to draw, you could send a photograph. Or Michael has sent me, he sent me his drone model, which is absolutely extraordinarily beautiful in its detail, which is so fascinating for me, seeing he's a microbiologist, that he's got such, he can move up that next level to having that kind of detail with the hands is really interesting. So look, we've got a couple of weeks. I'll leave it there. Watch the workshop from last week. Email me if you've got any questions, and you can submit via WhatsApp to me. That's totally fine. or you can put it on the Google Classroom, or you can email me, annaliebt29@gmail.com. Thanks.
Why don't you put your email in the chat if you're,
I will.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I'm hoping to make an artist's book, and I'm hoping to get it done by the next 2 weeks. I'll have it to you.
So Annalie, with this book, would that be something that will be freely available for people to download?
Oh yeah. If I send it to everyone.
Or you could send it to us and we could distribute
it. Yeah. I'm gonna get TAs to have a look at it just to check to make sure I'm branded rightly, and we'll acknowledge and do all that. It's a beautiful little book already. I absolutely love it already. So it'll just get sent out electronically to all of us. Yeah.
Yes.
You can just print it off.
Thanks a lot, Annalie. And in fact, to point out, we did this drawing exercise and compilation activity in Mumbai as well in February as part of our astrobiology workshop, and that went really, really well. And everybody took back a copy with them as a memory from the workshop. Of course, we can't do that right now, but it's something that you'll all still have that will connect you all to this particular course. So I think we've had an excellent journey. It's been such a fun ride talking through the different aspects of astrobiology throughout the last 7 weeks. And it's, I think, that time when everyone's wondering, how do we get involved? Where do we go from here? So those are the kind of questions we are going to help you answer. And towards that, I think the first starting point for those of you who are students is to understand where can you take up more formalized degrees. If you're a researcher, you're interested in knowing how do you get funds. If you have experiments in mind, who's going to fund you? And if you're looking to move elsewhere to take up studies, I've put together a few slides that will give you an idea of the different programs around the world. And just a disclaimer that obviously this is not a comprehensive list. It's something that we have been able to put together based on our own personal resources. We encourage you to, in fact, go beyond and find more information as well. So with that, let me just try to share my screen. Okay. Oops. Can someone confirm?
Yes.
Visible? Okay, thank you. All right, so opportunities for you and the road ahead. So this is going to be, again, we'll try to make it interactive where people, if they like, they can ask questions. To save time, it might help to just perhaps post your questions. And also for those of you who have questions for Annalie, you can also do the same in the Q&A. We have instructors and TAs who will be reading the questions as well. So today's topics. So I will start with giving you again a summary of the work that is happening at our center currently. So for those of you who are in India, who are looking at taking up a research project in India, this might be the most immediate relevant thing for you to look at. And I will also point out the different labs that we have in India that are doing relevant astrobiology research work, and also point out some of the funding opportunities in India. From there, Jen has, Dr. Jennifer Blank, she's been kind enough to share a few slides that I have integrated into my presentation. So she'll be talking about the US opportunities at NASA as well as at Blue Marble Space Institute of Science. We have a slide from Dr. Jonathan Clark, which mentions the different courses in astrobiology in Australia. And then thanks to Michael Macy, we have some more slides on the opportunities in the UK. So most of this information is really, for information purposes. So you don't have to take notes. This is not going to be graded, obviously. This is just information for you that we will have it available after the class is over. So you can always go back and refer to it. So it's okay if you miss out on a little bit of information if I'm trying to go through all of this information fast. This resource will be available online, so you can go back and refer to it. And lastly, I've put together a few slides on you guys, on yourselves. So throughout the course, we've been asking you some questions, just generic questions for our own curiosity to try to understand, how does this group think? How is it, in fact, interpreting some of those questions? So that's interesting information for us. And you guys have been kind enough to answer that as well. So I'll reveal some of the answers. Most of it is already available on Google Classroom, but we'll have a discussion and see how you all are doing with it. And yeah, I think finally we'll have a discussion over Q&A and see what kind of questions we're getting. So hopefully this session is of interest to all of you, and it will help you connect with astrobiology beyond this course after this course ends. So a few slides on my center, and forgive me for those of you who are seeing this slide for the 10th time, but this is important because it's a summary slide that gives an idea of all the different work that's happening at our center. And I haven't listed all our partners as well. We've had an update in terms of our partners, but just to give you guys an idea, we're a new center. We've been in existence since February of 2019, and we are the first center that is dedicated for astrobiology research. Having said that, there are several other institutions in India which are a lot older, a lot more well established, that have been undertaking astrobiology relevant research, but they are primarily earth sciences focused centers. Whereas our center has been, the primary objective of this particular center at Amity University is astrobiology research. So we start and continue our work with astrobiology. Our focus areas are threefold, you can say. So we focus on experiments in the field, in analog field environments, experiments to be conducted in space environments, basically looking at reduced gravity effects on living organisms. And lastly, we are also developing systems in our labs where we are trying to develop technologies that will help astrobiology. So currently there's a Lunar Drill development exercise that has been undertaken by students who are developing drills that will be that are being designed to operate on the south pole of the lunar surface. So those are our three main areas, and I'll talk very quickly about each of those things. And also, of course, we undertake a lot of science and communication activities. So for those of you who are really, really interested in science communication and public engagement, also do reach out to me, because we're also looking at strengthening and expanding that section of connecting with social media, finding new innovative ways in which we can translate science to a language which is easily received by the public. And obviously we are well supported by our partner organizations at Mars Society Australia, Open University UK, Blue Marble Space, for technology with Paris Defense, and science communication in the past we've done with First Post. And we're also, in fact, an organization that allows students around the world to register for workshops, online workshops that are conducted free of cost by the Indian Space Research Organization. So if you sign up for any of those courses, or if you're keen to sign up for any of those courses, you can apply, you can register on their website using our center as a nodal institution, and we obviously go through the people who are applying for it. And if there's it's not a robot or it's not a bot or a spam or anything, most of the times we approve the people because they're looking out for knowledge, and we enable ISRO in that sense to allow their knowledge to be propagated. So about our flight opportunities, so currently in India we have two platforms that will allow space biology experiments. One is the PS4 orbital platform, which is the last stage of the PSLV rocket, which is a rocket of India, standard rocket of India that has been doing very, very well over the last couple of decades. And that allows experiments to be conducted in low Earth orbit. And the only disadvantage there is that you're not getting your experiment back. So you have to design your experiment in a way that it starts in space, it conducts the experiment, and then you get the data back electronically. So you can't retrieve the sample and then do a lot of biological analysis after it's back. Everything has to happen on board. And the other opportunity on the right, the first opportunity that was offered for a recoverable experiment was with the Gaganyaan capsule, which is part of the human spaceflight mission of India. And they'll be doing some test flights next year. They've already, in fact, selected scientific experiments that will be flying on this particular mission. But the reason I'm putting the slide up there is we have been indicated that there will be more follow-up flights. So for those of you in India, as well as in other countries who are interested in collaborating on experiments that relate to human health, human factors, supporting any studies that will help astronauts, stay and work in the space environment, I think that's an exciting opportunity as well. And as an Indian institution, we are eligible to apply for these slots. And if selected, we are given funding to do the experiments. For the Gaganyaan, the one on the right, Whereas for the one on the left, once you are selected, the cost of the experiment has to be borne by the institution. And in the past, we've shared costs with the collaborating institutions. So if you belong to a university who's interested in doing a microgravity experiment, this might be something to talk about with your supervisor or anybody else at your university, and we can discuss what kind of experiments you're interested in flying in collaboration with us. And if it lines up with some of the work that we have currently ongoing, for example, right now we're mainly interested in observing plant calyces, so looking at small shoots of plants, how do they grow, roots and shoots of plants in microgravity environment. We also have a researcher who is interested in understanding how bacteria grows, so looking at probiotics and other kinds of interesting bacteria cultures, how do they grow in microgravity environments. So those are the two, you can say, focus areas right now based on our current projects, but we're obviously open to conducting expanding our microgravity research component as well. So another thing to keep in mind, if you're a student working elsewhere, studying elsewhere in India, and are interested in conducting research, this might be an interesting opportunity for you to explore. Moving on to field sites. So what you can see behind me right now, my wallpaper, and this is where I was, in fact, until about a week ago, a few days back, in fact, is in Ladakh. And we've already spoken about Ladakh. It's an exciting place. It's a high altitude, cold, dry desert environment. And it offers these diverse, different systems that allow us to study different, explore different questions of astrobiology. So whether that is hot springs, as you can see mainly here, looking at saline shore lakes, looking at sand dunes. So next year we have an expedition that is being currently planned, and I'm receiving a lot of questions already from students who are keen to be part of it. So apologies if I haven't responded to everyone, but more information will be posted online by December end or January about this. And there will be slots open for students to participate in this. And this is open for international people as well. So it's not just for Indian students. We have in the past had people coming from all parts of the world to take part in the expedition to Ladakh. And there will be more information on the kind of science that is being planned, the technology that is being tested. And we're also, in fact, working towards establishing a research station at Sokar, which is a site in Ladakh. Now, whether people are interested in doing simulated studies or whether they're interested in understanding how field work takes place, how samples are collected, and just in general getting a feel of working in the field, experiencing these harsh UV radiated, extreme temperatures, dry environments. I think for someone who's interested in astrobiology, and even if you're not someone who's very outdoorsy, I think you should definitely step out and do one field trip, because it really connects you with the elements. It makes you understand, because if you're studying natural systems, you cannot just stay inside an indoor lab and do that. You have to step out and try and get an understanding of how complex and how diverse a system can actually be. And if you have someone doing that, guiding you through that entire process, that's the best that you can get. So more information will be posted soon on this. This is just to announce the fact that we've received all the permissions to go ahead and conduct this research activity starting next year. And I encourage everyone to subscribe if you haven't to our website, and you'll be getting an update as and when things get public and it's open for people to apply for. So this is just the last slide on the Ladakh project. So we've just listed some of the different kinds of technologies that we are interested in exploring. Just as it is at most Mars analog sites, we're interested in high latency communication operation testing, because when you go to Mars, you will be probably operating from inside a hab, and you'll be talking to people who are on Earth, and there will be 20-minute delay between your communication as it is sent and received on Earth. So what does that delay actually do to your entire operation? So that's really important for you to understand. And obviously all of the components around you, your spacesuits, your rovers, all of your different sensors, so those things need to be tested in the field. They need to be rugged enough to survive the extreme environment. They need to be light, portable, low powered, compact, miniaturized, for you to carry around. And some of these things normally are quite massive, some of these analysis instruments. So we're interested in seeing how we can miniaturize most of these components that we can carry with us into the field. And in the past, in 2016, we've had the ExoMars Habit instrument, which was tested, a prototype of it was tested in Ladakh, which was mainly measuring local wind speeds, temperatures, relative humidities, and also trying to understand how do salts undergo deliquescence, they get hydrated because of the presence of, of that particular atmospheric pressure that is present at that particular high altitude, which is quite low and similar to what it was on ancient Mars. So it was an excellent site to test that particular instrument. So this is just to kind of give you a flavor, not to say that we're limiting ourselves to any of these things, but to point out the importance of analog sites, the importance of a station at the present site, which will allow people to stay and work for longer durations of time. So we are, at the moment, I can reveal that we have about plans for, say, 5 teams of 8 to 10 people. This number might go up because we also have to look at the logistics. So getting people to Ladakh and up to that high altitude and bringing them back is a massive affair. So it has to be optimized in that sense. We can't take teams of 100 there, obviously, but that might just increase to about 25 to 30 people per team that we can take up there. There'll obviously be the research team, which will be conducting their work. And then alongside that, we're trying to work out ways in which we can take teams of students who can work independently, who will be given like small projects, and they'll be led by one science instructor and conducting these particular field activities. So it's a 90-day window roughly, because in the summer, that's the only time the weather is favorable for you to live and work there. The roads are cleared. There's no snow that is blocking them off. Normally, the roads are in fact clear. That's what I've been told. Nowadays, they do a really good job at ensuring that the roads are cleared up. But it's mainly it gets really, really harsh when you're working there in the winters. So we tend to limit our activities, at least for the first season, during the summer. So starting from around June, mid-June to end June, all the way until August end, early September is the window that we're looking at. And there'll be constant movement of teams coming in, staying there, and then going back. So more information on that. So stay tuned, for more activities. The other side, of course, in India and closer to our campus here in Mumbai is the Lunar crater. And this again is a very exciting place for those of you who are interested in understanding how do craters form, understanding how craters can actually store water bodies over long periods of time, how they can collect, how can organics be deposited in sediments, and perhaps trap proofs of ancient life inside them. So this is another area that will be explored further. We don't have plans for a station there, but there will be subsequent field visits to the region, and we're trying to find ways in which we can incorporate a field workshop that will have a learning based outcome attached to the particular project. So you have little activities that you're conducting. So more information on that soon as well. Currently, everything is difficult to access for people who are outside of India, but certainly for people who are in India, this is something that can be done and can be planned out. And hopefully by end of next year, so we're looking at around November, December 2021 timeframe, is when the weather is a lot more better, favorable to visit Lonar, which is actually central India. So it's really, really hot and dry in the summer and difficult to do field work. But somewhere around now until end of December is the perfect time to go there and conduct work. In fact, even until February or March. So another important site. And I've just mentioned 2 sites. There's several other sites in India which we have identified and are trying to highlight as important astrobiology sites that are open for exploration. So we are all working towards a paper, in fact, that will basically be highlighting the astrobiology potential of most of these sites. And once that's out, it will probably take time because it's still conceptual stages right now. But that will kind of give you a better idea of the different opportunities in India to do fieldwork at these sites. And lastly, from Amity, we have, like I mentioned, the Lunar Drill design work. So over the summer, I had 4 students who were working with me. This was a collaborative project with IIT Bombay, and they were mainly basically focusing on different aspects of the challenges of drilling on the surface of the moon. And this is currently just a model-based software study right now. We've submitted a proposal, and if that gets selected, we'll be setting up a Lunar Drill rig on campus, which will allow us to do some experimental work as well. And it's quite challenging to drill on the moon. It requires a lot of power. It requires automation. We need to have a better understanding of the thermal environment when the drill starts heating up. What does that do to the regolith around it? So I had students focusing on different aspects. So there's students listening into this who are interested, who are engineering background students or lunar science, planetary science background students, or who are interested in taking this up. Feel free to write to us, and we'll try to find ways in which we can give you small tasks that you'd like to take up as part of your research thesis, or perhaps next year in the summer as well. So that was all about Amity. In terms of activities here in India, there's several labs. I've only mentioned the few people who we've directly been working with, but I can tell you that there are not too many people. It's perhaps going to be just perhaps as many as the ones I've listed here, maybe as 5-6 more people who I might not be aware of or connected with. So like I said, it's not a comprehensive list, but these are good places to start. So Dr. Sudha Rajamani in Pune, she's been leading a very good and successful lab for prebiotic chemistry work. Her lab is in fact called Cool Lab, Chemical Origins of Life. And they're located in the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, ISER Pune. So do write to her if that's an area of work you're interested in. For geomorphology, Mars analog research, habitability, there's Dr. Benita Fartial, another excellent science communicator and scientist at BSIP, Bibul Sani Institute of Paleosciences. In fact, I'm trying to arrange a webinar at my center, that will be delivered by her sometime next month. So hopefully that, gets conceptualized and finalized. We'll have it announced as well in the next couple of weeks. Dr. Mukund Sharma, who in fact gave the last webinar, he's a Precambrian paleobiologist and a very experienced, excellent researcher, has a lot of experience working with stromatolite formations in India. And if those of you are interested in early Earth life, I think that's an excellent group to get associated with. Another thing about BSIP is that they have extensive field experience. These guys have worked in central India, in the deserts, in Himalayas, even in the polar regions. So they have a lot of experience. For those of you who are interested in doing field work, I think that's an excellent group to kind of get in touch with and work with. In fact, we'll be signing an MOU very soon with them, and getting mentored, in fact, on many of those different aspects. For those of you who are interested in exoplanet habitability work, Dr. Margarita Safonova, she's a scientist at the Indian Institute of Astrophysics in Bangalore, and very approachable, great person to work with, I think. I haven't personally worked with her so far, but all the interactions I've had with her, I think have been amazing and very thought-provoking. So she's a great person to connect with. And Dr. Shiv Mohan Singh at BHU, Banaras Hindu University, which has recently been made an Institute of Eminence, which is a privileged status given to a very few institutions in India. And also with that status comes funding. So he is in fact heading a cold biology lab at his institute as well. So these are just some names, and I encourage you to Google the names and find their personal websites and try to connect with these people. We're also all trying to form into a national society for astrobiology. So that's another thing in the works that will kind of keep everybody connected and work together. But I encourage people to reach out to people who are Earth scientists and space researchers. You just might never know that they have a parallel interest in astrobiology, because many of these things are overlapping, many of these fields are overlapping. So don't just limit yourself to people who are identifying themselves as astrobiologists. You might in fact be able to strike up a conversation with a researcher in India who might be doing very exciting things and might not be immediately aware, or might not be having it as his personal primary interest. But if you tell him that you'd like to do this, but with an astrobiology angle, that person might just be interested to take you on board. So that's, and these are labs that are well funded, have a lot of good infrastructure, are in place. So I think that's very, very important for groups of students who are getting in to get access to all of these kind of resources. We are at Amity also a new center, but at the same time, we are housed in the Biotechnology Institute, and we're working towards having a full-fledged astrobiology research facility. And until that happens, we are supported by our partner organizations as well as the Biotechnology Institute on our campus. In terms of funding opportunities in India, again, this is not a comprehensive list, but some of the first places for you to kind of start with. So the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, they have a program called Respond, and that's a round-the-year program that students can apply for funding for. I think you need to go through a faculty member. So if you're a student who is interested and have a faculty member who's willing to mentor your project, you can work with your faculty member as a principal investigator, as a PI, and submit a proposal to Respond. And they have, if you go to the website, ISRO Respond website, you will get all of the information on the different areas of priorities that they have listed. And for astrobiology, in fact, there is not an explicit mention of astrobiology, but there is an explicit mention for Mars analog research under space sciences. So I think that's a broad enough area where astrobiology can kind of wriggle in. And also, I think they would be interested to learn more about what exact work you're planning to propose to do. So that's one area. In addition to the Respond program, ISRO has something known as space technology cells. So a few IITs and the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. So they have these technology cells that support research, mainly for students who are part of this institution, but you can actually have a collaborated proposal that is submitted for funding. So all of these technology cells have their own funding pools. So you can apply in collaboration with a faculty member at these institutions and work with them and win a project for doing astrobiology research. Very recently, the Atal Innovation Mission, which is a government program that is basically funding a lot of new innovations and new projects, has set aside funding for space. And in fact, I think the deadline for that is the 31st of October. So it's mainly for startups and medium to small, micro, small, medium, MSMEs, micro, small, medium enterprises who are interested in supporting space technology. So that's another area of work. And within that, they have identified space robotics as an area that they're interested in funding. So space robotics, as you would know, is something that is crucial for collecting samples or moving around your camera on a rover, for example, those kind of things. So for those of you who are having a robotics background, I think that's another funding opportunity for you. And in addition to that, we have our traditional science funding streams that are offered by the different departments and ministries, such as Department of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology, and Ministry of Earth Sciences. So none of these have specific astrobiology programs. So that's a limitation that we are actually working towards. In fact, we had sent in our recommendations to ISRO as well that there needs to be a separate funding opportunity for astrobiology. So all of that is under consideration right now. But until then, a lot of the work that we are doing can very well fit into some of these areas. So for young scientists and researchers who are listening in, these are opportunities for you to tackle. And of course, moving on to now Blue Marble Space, which has been an excellent resource for myself, I think some of the other instructors and many students listening in as well. Co-founded by Dr. Sanjoy Som and Dr. Jacob Mishra. They have done an excellent job putting together this nonprofit organization that is serving students and faculty members and providing excellent resources for astrobiology. Astrobiology India is one initiative that came out of Blue Marble Space. So I encourage students who are in India to join our initiative and help us grow astrobiology in the country. We have monthly meetings and we've identified workshops, fieldworks, and microgravity experiments that we'd like to do together. We also have a website, Astrobiology India. In fact, that was the main resource of Astrobiology India, and it still is quite relevant because it has a website link that is here that lists, it has a great list of colleges around the world that offer astrobiology as a program. So I encourage you to do that. We also have the Young Scientist program, and there's a slide on that after this that Jen has put together, so I'll talk about it later. And there's also SegaNet, which is a great social website that actually allows you to connect with like-minded astrobiologists around the world. And obviously our own WhatsApp group, I've been noticing it has about 219 odd members who are very communicative on that as well. So feel free to make up your own different ways in which you'd like to stay connected after this. So Blue Marble Space is great for people who are new into astrobiology, who want to connect and transition into the field and meet mentors. So moving on to some slides from Jen. So she has, Jen, feel free to jump in. I'm happy to just go through some of the points that you've listed here.
Okay, Sid, yeah, thanks. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to the person who made the little cartoon of Dumakatu. And Sid, can you tell us who that is?
So Dhumketu was made by a student at Amity, and I'm embarrassed to say that I don't remember his name. He's not on the course, but he's a design student, and I will make sure that we give him a shout out. And in fact, to start with, it was your idea, Jen. So thanks a lot to you, because that was a little figure that you had. I don't know if you still have it with you.
Yeah, I still have a little stuffed animal. It's a comet stuffed animal.
So,
that's how nerdy I am.
so this idea came because of Jen, and she suggested that we should have one, and I think that's one of the best ideas we've had so far when it comes to
thanks.
And
anyway, it's very cute.
Yeah.
It's very cute, and I think did we make this icon available for everybody, Sid?
Yes.
On the Google Classroom rather, because I think it's very cute and
absolutely.
Yeah. Little comment.
We're not trademarking or copywriting it. It's open for people to use.
Anyway, I'm trying to use it with pleasure. So as Sid mentioned, some of us are part of Blue Marble Space Institute of Science. So Afshin, Sid, and I are all members of Blue Marble Space Institute of Science, or BMSIS, as we say. And Astrobiology India is an initiative under the larger sort of parent nonprofit company, Blue Marble Space. So BMSIS is another part of Blue Marble Space. And it has something called the Young Scientist Program. And we actually have some of our essentially teaching assistants who've helped with this course have been YSP students this summer. And right now, essentially, you can apply to become a YSP online. There's a link here, and it usually starts. Usually it's a summer-long internship. Although there are exceptions. So, for example, I've had YSPs in the winter, different times of the year, and although the courses or the programs designed for students, I've had YSPs who are not students, so they're actually two cases. They have an undergraduate or a master's degree and are taking a break before they do something else. So in other words, there are many possibilities there. And it's also possible to contact a scientist who does not have a YSP, I guess, a project posted on the site, and then discuss with him or her, and then a new opportunity could be created to suit you, depending on the outcome of that discussion. So it's just a good source to see who's at Blue Marble and who might be interested in having students or interns work with him or her. And usually in that case, it's just a great opportunity to get that one-on-one interaction with a mentor who's an astrobiology scientist. I mentioned that the program requires doing or participating in a research project that's defined by the mentor. And then you have some other requirements, like you have to attend a certain number of seminars during a several-month period. And then there are 2 short writing assignments, such as writing a summary of a research paper, or taking an interview of a scientist, and writing up your answers to questions in an interview. And those are pretty much fun. All of my interns have said those are enjoyable assignments. And then at the end, you get a certificate. So it's another opportunity to get something to show for your effort that just shows that you're sort of starting to step toward astrobiology activities. And as Sid mentioned, there's also SegaNet, which is a little more low key. It's really for citizens and citizen scientists to meet each other and interact with scientists who are part of Blue Marble. And it's just a way to mostly meet through online discussion. There are a lot of thematic groups that fall under SegaNet. It could be women in science, it could be radio astronomers in science, whatever. You can create your own, and then you find essentially their chat rooms and opportunities to meet via Zoom. So it's open to everybody, and even if you don't have an idea of what you want to do there, it's just fun to be sort of on the newsletter or on the mailing list. And what I would say, if you're looking for other opportunities, it never hurts to write to a scientist or engineer or researcher who you've seen written about or met or seen online, and just introduce yourself and it's probably more effective if you say these are some skills I have, or this is a particular piece of work I've seen that I'm interested in. So make it a little bit, if you can make it easier for that person to write back to you, that you'll probably get more likely to get a response. And also, if the person doesn't write back, don't take it personally, because everybody's busy. And something I like to do, because sometimes people don't write back to me too, I like to resend the email and say, dear so-and-so, I know you must be very busy, and perhaps my email rolled off your screen, so I'm sending it again. But just don't give up. You have to be persistent. It's sort of like we have to be when we're looking for funding for our research. We often have to try or submit a proposal more than one time before we're successful in getting funding for a project. So I'd just keep trying and don't give up. Okay, next slide, Sid. And now I've talked about other internship opportunities. So for NASA and for U.S. taxpayer-supported programs, they're limited to U.S. citizens. Makes sense. Citizens are paying taxes, and these taxes support the internship programs. So I put a website here for internships through NASA. The National Science Foundation also has one. They have experiences for undergraduates called the REU program. And it's pretty easy to find them. At least I've just Googled a few things, opportunities for students, internships for students in the US. So it's easy to find those if you're a US citizen. For international students, it's a little more challenging to try for an internship program through NASA. I put another link here. But in these cases, you must be a student, a registered student, and you must partner through a sister space agency. I was surprised not to see India on here, Sid, since I know you came to Ames. Worked at Ames for several months. But anyway, current 2020 countries that are partnering with this program are listed here. And if you go to that website, you can find the links and email addresses of the individuals to contact if you're interested in trying to get an international internship. Okay, next slide. And then finally, Alyssa, who talked about planetary protection and legal aspects, she has a master's from the International Space University. And so you can also, this is a one-year program. And if there are any of you who are actually interested in pursuing more sort of policy aspects of astrobiology and space science, check out that website. And if you're a student there, you can often have 2 to 3 month position at one of several NASA centers, depending on the space available, available interest from people at those centers. So that's another way to get to NASA. And finally, I just want to say, in my experience as a student and as a mentor and as a supervisor, this is really not great news in the sense that NASA interns usually start in a volunteer role, and that's an unpaid role. But what I recommend to people who contact me, who I take as interns, and say, let's come for a few months. I mean, you can come for a few months, usually no longer than 3, and then we'll see how it goes from there. And some of the advantages of that is that we can start something like that pretty quickly. It gets your foot in the door, so you can see if this is something you might like to do, and if it's something, you have to take it seriously, but also if it's something that, if it's something you might like to do, then it gives you an entree to other introductions within NASA. It gives you exposure to NASA activities and research and other people. And if you want to do a volunteer internship, you might be able to be a little more specific or negotiate what you could do. In other words, I don't want to be someone who washes dishes, or someone who just does some, entry-level work. I want to do something that might contribute to a bigger project and then get credit for it if I'm not getting paid. So there is, and feel, don't hesitate to ask for things. People can say no, but you never know when they might say yes. So it's better to try than to not try. And then finally, NASA is very conservative, and so they like to take people who they know. And this means that if you're there as a volunteer or through someone you've met, you're more likely to get a position there. So I know numerous people who've come mostly from European countries, and they first came as interns for a few months, and then they came back as paid employees. So usually through a contracting company that staffs NASA projects, so mostly through engineering. Disadvantages, first of all, if you're not a US citizen right now during the pandemic, it's unlikely that you'll be able to do remote access work because you won't be able to get through the NASA, I guess, blocks to get into the NASA websites. So that's a little discouraging now. That's another advantage of Blue Marble universities, is that we don't have the same kind of restrictions for sharing access with non-US citizens. And finally, disadvantages, of course, is that it's not a paid position. But the cool thing about these internships is that you could be at any stage of your career and still find something. So we had some questions about, from people who might look or might be interested in pursuing sort of non-typical astrobiology projects. And this would be, as an intern, we had someone who came in from Turkey who was a social scientist, and he essentially brought, and actually he's now a member of Blue Marble Space, but he brought social sciences to astrobiology and traveled around the country and interviewed people who were doing astrobiology, and then made essentially statistical maps showing all the connections between publications, between types of research, and really drew out patterns about the type of researchers and where astrobiology was being conducted in the US. And so that was really cool. And we're also excited, and none of us knew about it. So anyway, so that's the third slide. And the other thing is, I think that all of instruction in this course would be willing to, to respond to you if you have questions, specific questions. So Google, there are a lot of other places to look for opportunities through the European Astrobiology Network, for example. There are places in Australia where you can find astrobiology courses online. And same, likewise, other places in the US that are, some of the courses are free, some are pay courses. UK, Charlie Kekell teaches a very, very well-known astrobiology course that used to be free. I'm not sure if it still is, but you might find things that we don't know about, and if you want to ask questions about them or see if we could recommend something, I think all of us would be, you should feel free to reach out to us and ask us questions after the course too. So I guess that's it for now.
Thanks, Jen. And I think I'd like to add that do not feel isolated, because you might be in a country that does not have a space agency, that is not listed. If you want to work with people at NASA, for example, you might be from a country that's not listed here. And also in general, your government might not be having a space program or any such thing. But make the most of international collaborations. You most likely will be having a university around you. You might be having people at that university who are working with international collaborators. Even if you're not able to travel outside your country, if you're not able to find funds to leave your country, try to find ways in which you can take up a fundamental program, get yourself at least an undergraduate or a master's degree, and then look for specializations, because the more you educate yourself, the more funding opportunities start opening up. And the competition also tends to kind of reduce as you're trying to move up the ladder. So the more you specialize yourself, the more experiences you gain, you are just improving your profile. So it might take a little longer, but it will happen. Like we've had people, I was at NASA Ames, even though India is not mentioned on this list, because I was in the Netherlands, was working on my master's project there. And it just so happened that someone from NASA Langley Research Center was giving a talk at our university, and I struck up a conversation, and he knew someone at Ames who was interested in getting students over. And at that point of time, it was a lot easier for foreign nationals to work at NASA. It's kind of become slightly more difficult in the last few years. We're hoping things should change soon as well. But nonetheless, these are things outside your control. I think what I'm trying to point out is there'll always be all kinds of constraints around you, but don't lose heart. Just keep finding ways, speaking to people, working hard, and just stay ready. If you're ready, if you're prepared, and if an opportunity comes by, it becomes a lot easier rather than waiting for an opportunity to come and then preparing for it. So I think this is just generic, unsolicited advice that I'm giving out. But anyways, and just to point out, Jen, I am trying to see if we can get India on that list. I'm in touch with someone at ISRO as well. So hopefully,
I mean, to get on this list, there was a comment saying, why is the DLR, for example, the German Space Institute isn't on this list, or either is CNES, the French space agency. So I can only guess, I don't know, but I can only guess that to get on this list, you have to have a special legal memorandum of understanding.
Yes.
And it has to be very formal. So this is very formal, but it doesn't mean there aren't opportunities for astrobiology within those other individual space agencies.
And also
right?
to point, that's right. And these are programs. Hello?
Yes.
Sorry, I was saying that these are programs that are decided at a very high level, and they're time bound. So if you're seeing the European Space Agency, it says program on hold, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no ongoing collaboration or people from Europe in working at NASA. And this is again not to say that there are people outside of these countries who are not working at NASA. There are people. These are just formal collaborations already in place. But it doesn't stop you as a researcher to contact someone at NASA and try to find ways in which you can get an internship. There is a list of countries which I am aware are listed as designated countries, which the US maintains. So like I said, these are things outside your control. Once you realize that there's something that's outside of control, don't sweat it. Find other means. Science is science, whether you do it at NASA or whether you do it in India or Europe or Australia or anywhere else. So,
well, and NASA has a big astrobiology push, but there are many other countries that have astrobiology. So
absolutely.
I put NASA here because that's what I know.
Sure, and with that, I will point out a few examples in Australia.
Great, yeah.
So thanks to Dr. Jonathan Clark, he's just put together, he's in fact a teacher at the astrobiology course, online course at Swinburne University. So for those of you who are in Australia, New Zealand, or Oceania, or are interested to going to these, this part of the world, these are some of the options that you have to take up. I don't think they have a program in astrobiology. They're mainly courses to be taken. There's a very nice course at the Australian Centre of Astrobiology at University of New South Wales, which is headed by Dr. Martin van Kranendonk. And he's an amazing instructor. And there's also Carol Oliver there.
Oliver, yes. And I think those courses are both free, aren't they?
I'm not sure about that.
They used to be, these two courses used to be free also. And as John's noted, there's an undergrad and a graduate level course. And so they're wonderful. We have friends who have taken the courses, and I've talked with both Martin and Carol Oliver about the content, and I wish I could take all of the classes myself.
Australia is a beautiful country to do astrobiology, absolutely. They've got stromatolites, they've got all these things. Awesome.
Is Newcastle listed there? Is that in the UK?
No, there's a Newcastle north of
Australia.
North
I see it. It has Australia. My geography is. Sorry, Emily. Newcastle, Australia. Okay.
Yeah, it's north of Sydney. It's a nice place. Okay, so with that, Michael, are you with us? Would you like to talk about UK?
Yep. Happy to discuss some of these. And it is always confusing for me as well, Jen, that everywhere in the UK also has another place either in America or Australia or New Zealand. And it's like, yeah. Anyway, so I'd just like to echo some of the points that have been previously raised. If you're interested in the research that a particular group is doing, and let's say as an environmental microbiologist, it's a microbiology facing project. If you were to do a master's or a PhD in a subject that you find really interesting, you can always transfer to more direct astrobiology related research or put a spin on this particular research project down the line. My PhD again is in soil related microbiology, and I didn't do any astrobiology until I started my postdoc with the Astrobiology OU group 3 years ago now. So for finding an astrobiology post in the UK, and I know some about Europe, most of the active communities and groups within the UK and Europe have Facebook and Twitter pages. I personally found my job posted on Facebook on the Geomicrobiology Network, which have an annual free meeting, not this year, sadly, due to COVID. But I definitely recommend, I know that some people, it was weird giving this as advice because one, I know some people have legitimate reasons to not like Facebook and Twitter. And also I know that some people on this course have got massive Twitter followings or Facebook followings already, but I highly recommend, even if you have small accounts on both of these websites, in addition to LinkedIn, because it's where some of these research groups are very active. So there's AbGrady, which is the Astrobiology Graduates in Europe scheme. There's the Astrobiology Society of Britain, which I'll be talking about more in a second. They're definitely worth following as well. They have a biannual meeting. There's the European Astrobiology Institute, which is new. So there is a physical location for the European Astrobiology Institute, but it's also a scheme whereby all astrobiology groups in Europe can pay in and then have access to more shared resources. And then again, the Geomicrobiology Network. So the Geomicrobiology Network is also free to join and now has an associated seminar series. So it's definitely worth following them on Twitter. They recently had a talk given by one of the postdocs in the UK Centre for Astrobiology's research group as well. So definitely worth a follow. Sorry, Sid, next slide, please. So going back to the Astrobiology Society of Britain, their website is incredibly helpful if you're specifically interested in contacting astrobiology research groups, because so their map is ever so slightly out of date, but still very helpful. And it shows the roughly 25 research groups spread across the UK. You may notice there's not 25 dots on this map, and that's because so many of them are in London. So there's a second map for London, but it lists specific areas of research interest. So in Newcastle in the UK, there's also ongoing astrobiology research that's more geology and chemistry focused than biology. So this is definitely a good resource to look into, just to get a list of names of who to contact. My summer student this year actually got the email address of my PI, Professor Karen Olsen-Francis, through this website. So it's definitely a good starting point if you're interested. Next slide, please. Sorry, I could have condensed these. So also for finding a PhD in the UK in general, findaphd.com is still the best resource. These are now advertised on Twitter and Facebook as well, more routinely, as we live in the modern age. But this is where I found my PhD, and this is where most get posted. Every posting provides details on how to contact the PI, but it also provides details on the funding restrictions. Now, PhDs in the UK as of 2020 are split into 3 different categories. You have to be a UK citizen, you have to be an EU citizen, or you can be a citizen from anywhere in the world and apply for the funding. It's a very uncertain time in the UK, and it's known that the EU specific funding may be changing as we leave the European Union and therefore lose access to specific funding blocks. But Research England, the parent organisation for all of the research councils in the UK, recently announced that they're removing restrictions on people from outside of the UK and outside of the EU applying for specific funding bodies. So it's definitely worth checking out the different funding options for these different PhD schemes. As Jen previously mentioned, the best way to apply for these things is to send a polite email like, dear, insert name here, I'm very interested in your research group. I did my undergrad or master's or most recent study here. I'm especially interested in this and this, and I've got experience in this area. It's the best way to go about it. Maybe you aren't especially suited for that project, but there's another one that they have that they would like you to apply for. That actually happened with my PhDs because there were 2 available. One was much more plant-centric, and they suggested I applied for the one that was slightly less plant-centric. Next slide, please. So for additional funding possibilities, so there's the Newton Fund, which work with different funding bodies in the UK to try and organise fellowships and workshops. Now they have a focus on Commonwealth countries. There's also the Global Challenge Research Fund, which is funded again by Research England, which is the parent for all of the other acronymed research councils in the UK. And they aim specifically to build connections between research groups from different countries. So if you're doing a PhD in a country outside of the UK, maybe you could talk to your PI about looking into this and approaching a UK-based research group and having an exchange of students or a training scheme. That's where this type of funding is. And then there's also specifically Commonwealth scholarships that funds things at both the master's, PhD and fellowship level for Commonwealth citizens of Commonwealth nations to go to UK-based universities. So there's a good amount of funding opportunity for students from Commonwealth nations to come to the UK at multiple levels of study. And next slide, please. I don't think I've got. Yes, yeah. So visiting UK-based universities. So there are many societies, learned societies, I think they're a bit pretentiously called, in the UK that can provide funding to members to visit and learn from and work with other research groups. So one example here is the Microbiology Society. There's also the Astrobiology Society, Great Britain. You can pay into the Society for Applied Microbiology. My personal advice would be, if you look at the grant schemes on the grant pages for some of these societies, if you have a specific area of interest, there will be a society that exists in that area. So if you type in geology, there are multiple geology societies in the UK. Instead of paying to join several of these, I would look at the grant pages and see what's most in line with your goals and your timeline, and join those where you could get either much easier access to funds or access to grants that would let you maybe do these specific things like visiting another group. So Microbiology Society is one I'd recommend. I recently put in for this type of scheme to visit a research group in Japan. So the funding is available, and societies are something that I think are often overlooked when it comes to approaching different organizations for funding.
And Michael, these are the to qualify for these, so you already have to be in one university and then you're applying to be a visitor, or can you just be a free agent?
It varies with scheme. So with the MicroSoc scheme, it has to be you're at a university and then you go and visit another one.
Yeah.
But there are. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's so. Just to be clear, you have to. Once you're at place A, then there are opportunities to apply to other places. But you have to be a visitor from a university. There have been some other questions about, and also thanks folks for putting really interesting links rather, and especially that milkweed book looks, or someone put a link on how to braid milkweed, or sorry, braid sweetgrass. So thank you for that, Ravi. Looks like a great book. I think I have a new hobby in my future. But no, just about funding, and I think in general in the U.S. at least, and I think it's true around the world, it's much more challenging to get funding for a master's degree, right? There is incentive by governments to invest in the PhD level research, right? Invest in the workforce for science and technology at the PhD level. So in fact, I tell my students who are in science that if at all possible, they should not go to a university that doesn't offer them a full ride for graduate school. Mm-hmm. Because usually you can come on as a researcher on a project, a university, faculty project or something. You shouldn't have to pay. Now, that said, they won't give you a big salary. They will give you a stipend, but that stipend should allow you to live and not have to go into debt. You just don't be able to buy a house or maybe a new car. But anyway, but for master's degree, and these are usually one year programs, it's much less common to find funding for those.
Mm-hmm. Unless, yes, that's very true in the UK.
Compete a small, larger group.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Michael. I think that's quite comprehensive, and you found your postdoc link on Facebook, and I found my PhD position on YouTube.
You guys, I think it's just amazing.
One of my PhD master thesis supervisors was giving I was just randomly, I think, having dinner or whatever and watching YouTube. And at that time I was at NASA, and I was just watching a YouTube video, and I happened to find my master thesis supervisor giving a talk in Sydney, Australia, about Mars sample return or whatever. And I was like, what's happening in Sydney, Australia? And that led me to the university where he was giving a talk, and that led me to the link. So it's funny where you can find information these days. So you have to really keep yourself, like you rightly pointed out, have an open mind and keep all options open and ears and eyes open. I'd also give this opportunity to Afshin and Annalie, if you guys want to chip in and say any words of advice for people looking out for opportunities in your regions. maybe Anli, you can start.
Yeah, I was thinking, did we mention the University Rover Challenge?
No, we haven't mentioned that.
Would you like to talk about that, Sid? Best
Sure.
of you.
Yeah, sure. So the Mars Society runs the University Rover Challenge. It's an international robotics competition that happens every year at the Mars Desert Research Station. And there's several, it's become so popular now. We have teams in drones coming over. I think probably, I don't know the numbers, but I think at least 40 to 50 teams have started participating each year. And I think many more, obviously in hundreds, apply for it. And the idea is you are a team of students who build a rover that has to accomplish a few engineering tasks, or maybe even a couple of scientific tasks that are put towards it. And they mainly deal with the rover having to traverse an uneven terrain. So it tests the mechanical trafficability of the rover, its wheels, its chassis and everything. It also has to accomplish certain tasks that involve software design. So it has to make certain decisions and things like that. And also I think they've also started having tasks which have robotic arms and drills on it, which can collect samples and then bring them in and do like a bit of a spectroscopy kind of an analysis, or even collect samples and then drop them at a particular point. So I think the recent round had a few winners. I think one of the Bangladeshi teams came first, and then the second and third.
It's amazing what these teams do with,
yeah.
A little bit of money, but not very much money. I know there was a few $1,000s.
Absolutely. And yeah.
They do these incredible things. Now, they do not survive the vibration test. They are not space ready, but just the creativity. Sid, we met with you. We met the IIT Bombay rover team one year, and I've talked to a lot with a rover team from Stanford, and they really assembled a very diverse team. And they, for example, Michael, they had a microbiologist who said, let's use egg whites as our calibration for life detection. And then they, made an arm that was probing surfaces, and they did this all in a shoestring budget. They also said that they almost flunked out of school because they got so obsessed with the project. But it's tremendous. Yeah. So it's
great. Yeah.
So we've had also some questions, Emily, about what about if you don't have a science degree? Are there opportunities for astrobiologists? And
I really believe. Sorry, Jen.
I mentioned the social scientist who came as a work at NASA. But do you have any comments on that?
Well, it depends. There's so many different ways of thinking about what the challenges are for humans in space. So I was thinking. A couple of weeks ago, both Sid and I did a paper, and I did a drawing workshop at the Australasian Society for Space Medicine. Now, they're really interesting because they look at everything. They look at the human body in space and human health and well-being. So they look at, emotional well-being as much as physical well-being, but they also look at things like ethical issues like population babies in space. They're an interesting group, and you can join them. They're not, they don't charge you, I don't think. Or you can look at maybe bigger groups like if you're interested in starships, maybe you could join the Institute for Interstellar Studies or in Britain, or you could join the British Interplanetary Society, a very big, broad-based group, something for everyone in those generalist societies. You do meet scientists and engineers, and everyone's there, but you also meet science fiction writers and artists and librarians and all different kinds of people.
Right, and I think I think Michael mentioned also that he didn't come into astrobiology focused research until later, right? So there are a lot of because astrobiology is so interdisciplinary, you could look for a project in a more mainstream field, and then essentially nuance it so it's relevant to astrobiology, whether it's microbes growing in unusual environments or environments that might be relevant to an icy world, or technologies that could be relevant to space missions. There's a question about food science. I know we have interest from some of the Amity biotechnology degree program students about food technology in space.
Yeah.
So there, So cool. And there's so much. It's so cool. And in terms of more philosophical or moral, ethical things, I'm not really sure. I actually have a very good colleague who started out as a petrologist, and now she's a minister, and she works at the interface between science and religion and looks at some of the dilemmas, and trying to generate language that's works with both extremes. And there are often, at astrobiology conferences, there are often panels trying to look at the connection or overlap between religion and astrobiology, or the search for life. So I think there's a lot of room to create your own path in astrobiology.
Yeah.
And certainly the meetings, certainly the conferences are open to everybody, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I think, that's the great thing about this course, that those of you out there who are undergrad and you're thinking, or you're at the end of your degree and you're thinking, what can I do now? Like, you can find a way to think through your own discipline to astrobiology, and those research skills are the most important, for sure. So space law, I guess, is the other thing we haven't talked about. Ethics and space law. It seems like, in any science discipline, any general science or other kind of undergrad degree can then help you to, as a base, as a premise for thinking about astrobiology in a postgraduate degree. Or if you've finished, then really it's about getting out there and doing the work, meeting people and forming a network like the one we've formed here is a big start.
Thanks, Annalie. And I should also point out that Alyssa, in her talk, had in fact listed a few resources at Harvard as well, which pertain to space policy. So as soon as we have her slides, I'll make sure that they're available. Otherwise, her lecture is already online. So I encourage you to revisit and just focus on the last few slides, where she's pointed out a few courses available at Harvard, and some of that pertain to space policy, planetary protection, and things like that.
Yeah.
And
thanks for pointing that out, Sid.
And another thing is a few examples, people who have come from unconventional backgrounds and are now astrobiologists. I remember I was watching an Ask an Astrobiologist of Pamela Conrad. I think she's at NASA Goddard, if I'm not wrong. And she was a musician, and she entered as a scientist quite late into her life. And I thought
she was an opera singer. She's a friend of mine. She's an opera singer.
Yeah.
And she had been a plumber, actually, and then she became an opera singer. And then she finished her PhD in her 40s and was hired immediately at JPL as sort of a Wonder Woman.
Absolutely. I was blown away. And then closer to home, Anushri Srivastav, she was studying social sciences or arts, I think. She was doing a bit of anthropology. And then she ventured into biotechnology, and now she's working at Open University. She's finishing up her PhD there and working on the Mars Science Laboratory team and analyzing some samples that have come from there. And she's spent some time at NASA Goddard as well. So from India, very much from India, who's made her own road, in fact, and built her own career around it. So there are tons of such people who go away unnoticed. And the more you read about them, the more interviews you watch, biographies you read, you come to know that, you're not at any different position that they were a few years back. And it's very much possible to kind of, Afshin, I'm sorry to have to pull you in, but I'd like you to also share a few words, because I know you had a amazing journey into NASA JPL as well. So.
Right. I was just waiting for, I didn't want to cut anyone in. But yeah, I see some of the questions have been very consistent throughout the workshop, of students being concerned of how they can enter astrobiology if they are, say, studying physics or mathematics or microbiology. I just want to add that, reiterate everybody's points here, that it does not matter what you're studying right now, as long as it's a science degree. Everybody can become an astrobiologist. Actually, you don't even have to be studying a science degree. You can be an economist or a psychologist, or be studying something else in social sciences, and you can still become an astrobiologist. So astrobiology is one field that we have in our world that welcomes everyone. So anyone who's interested in astrobiology can get involved in some way of shape or form to become an astrobiologist later on in their career. I did not take any astrobiology courses. When I learned about astrobiology, there was no such thing as astrobiology in India. Nobody even knew what that was. I had read about it in the magazine, Scientific American. And when I talked about this at my college, my professors, they just thought I was crazy and they had no idea what I was talking about. But then I moved to the UK and I started talking about astrobiology in my classes. And even in the UK, my professors thought I was just crazy and I was talking about things in space and whatnot. So uh, it's something that, and I was coming from a microbiology, molecular biology background. So I just continued to pursue my discipline and I went on to do research in molecular biology. It was only at the PhD level when I decided to take up a PhD that was focused in astrobiology research. And after joining NASA JPL, I realized that my peers, they did not come from astrobiology PhD backgrounds either. They were either geomicrobiologists or geologists or just pure microbiologists. And yet they are working in a field that is focused towards space biology or astrobiology. So really, when you're finally taking up that project in astrobiology, nobody is going to care what your degree is. As long as you have some expertise, as long as you have training in a lab or you've done some fieldwork, those are the essential things. You can apply your skills to astrobiology research. You don't need to have a label to be called an astrobiologist, really. So it's open to everyone, and like like Siddharth said, space for everyone. Space is for everyone. So astrobiology is for everyone. So don't be too concerned. Just look for opportunities, look for universities, look for degrees, and then see how you can utilize your degree or what coursework you will be required to take at graduate level to do that astrobiology research. And if you've finished your PhD already and you're thinking about doing postdoctoral research work, then that's okay. You don't have to take any courses. At postdoctoral level, you will just be required to apply your expertise of whatever field you're coming from towards astrobiology research. And the same applies for not just science backgrounds, also engineering students. So engineering backgrounds, the same thing applies to you. You get to work with scientists and get to design missions and whatnot in astrobiology research.
Right, and in engineering, actually, although engineers at NASA and working on missions often have PhDs, it's not a requirement. It's much less of a requirement to be, a leader in the engineering part or engineering side of missions.
Sure.
So that's, and in terms of the question about how can an engineering student get involved in this kind of work, well, or contribute? Well, I really think it's in that instrumentation and working at that interface between exploration and science to try to develop and test ways to explore and identify things of interest to astrobiology, whether it's characterize a physical environment, look for life, or just function in the crazy environments in space and on other planets. So anyway, it's cool.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for your, I think, excellent words. I think the main message here is that don't worry, don't stress it, just keep at it, find your passion. You all are special, you all have your own personalized strengths and weaknesses. So as soon as you've identified those, you'll be in a better position to decide what kind of a program you want to get into. I think that's the main message here. And in terms of opportunities, it's a lot better now than it was when we were all students. So I think all you need to do is keep yourself wired in to most of these activities that are taking place. And astrobiology is, I think it's a great gateway into science, technology in general. You might not be an astrobiologist, you might start with astrobiology to just get inspired and just discover how amazing it is to study science and technology, and that's absolutely fine. You know, you might just do a astrobiology project for 6 months, and then down the line you might realize that, well, this was great, but this is exactly what I want to do. I want to study rocks. I want to study how I don't know, resources are generated in nature. How do you get access to things? It could be anything. In terms from a mission design point of view, I think that's another great point that was made. We need people who can help us build mission architectures. We need to find better ways in which we can explore these worlds in the current scenario. We need to explore ways in which the government alone is not just tasked with these things. How do you leverage industries? How do you leverage, you know, non-space companies that would have a lot of strengths in communication, in resource mining, technologies? How do you get those people involved? And as soon as you've cracked that, you've put yourself at a very, very special place to build something that is, you know, that can be realized within the next decade, for example. So just keep yourself open towards all these different possibilities, and don't wait until you have a degree in a particular field to do that. I think that's, in general, again, some advice coming your way. So I think those are some great points, and feel free to write to us. We'll have a short Q&A as well. I'm just a bit mindful of time right now. We're at 11:20. So let me just zip through these final slides. So that's all about the information on opportunities ahead for you. And like I said, things will be posted on our website at Amity, so you'll have more information. I just thought it'd be fun to put together some of the questions that we've been asking at Google Classroom, and they tell us a lot about you, and they tell us a lot about how do you think. So I had posted this question even before this course started, and out of about 640 people, about 400 have responded. So the question was the most important reason, according to you, for space exploration? And I think by far, I've noticed that people have worked towards exploring new worlds and understanding natural processes there. Well, finding extraterrestrial life is important, but it's not as important, I think, to the group, that it's not just about the life aspect, but it's also about understanding the entire natural world, I think, in existence. So that was interesting. It just kind of gave me a perspective of how people think. And it's obviously a very science-friendly group right now. So it wasn't just about, you know, I didn't post any option there like posting your national flag or anything that was just giving you a personal or a national high to do. These were just some very global answers. Another question was, where do you think life on Earth originated? And quite surprisingly, a lot of the students feel that it started at the hydrothermal vents or the ocean floor. So obviously, this question was also posted at the start of the course, and people cannot have multiple answers. So there's no right or wrong answer right now, because we still ourselves do not know. But just to give an idea of what the class was thinking about. And what was interesting, which I haven't posted on these slides, is that there were these discussions that were taking place below these questions. It was almost like a forum. If you look at the comment section below, I encourage the instructors to actually do that. There were some really interesting dialogues that were taking place between students, and just some sentences and things like that. So I think it was really exciting to see people getting engaged in this question and trying to answer that. And perhaps, who knows, there might be a student listening into this who might be part of the team that finally answers the question where life has originated. Another question, I wanted to get a feel of which was the most favored destination in the solar system. So surprise, no surprise, Mars has again taken away the first party here. Of course, fueled and powered by Hollywood, I'm guessing, to some level, or just public perception and imagination, and obviously, of course, the NASA missions to Mars. But again, it was interesting to see that we also had the second entry was not the icy moon, it was actually Titan. So people were actually more interested in visiting Titan as a world as compared to Europa or even Enceladus, for that matter. And there were a few people who also wanted to go to Neptune and Uranus and Pluto in there. And surprisingly, quite a few for the Kuiper Belt object, which is also interesting. So I think people are just intrigued by worlds that haven't been explored enough. And I think more than, because we mainly look at where do we go for looking for life. Whereas if you connect it to the previous question that I asked, where people are more interested, the students are more interested in understanding the natural processes of these worlds rather than just the prospect of finding life. So I guess there it kind of makes sense that Titan has trumped Europa and Enceladus in that sense. And this was a question that I just posted last evening for us here in India, and I've received close to 100 entries. So we are interested in you telling us, how would you like to study astrobiology at Amity University next year? So for those of you who are interested in continuing your engagement at Amity University, I'm interested to understand what are the interest levels for a similar 7-week online course that would be a lot more focused on, say, a specialized topic, for example, on hot springs or hypersaline environments, or similar space radiation, perhaps. Are you interested in a conventional degree format, a BSc or an MSc program? Are you interested in a research thesis project, which goes from 6 months to a year, or perhaps even less, maybe even 3 months? You could vote for that. Or for a field workshop. I think that was the most popular one right now. I think perhaps also driven by the fact that everybody's locked in at home, everyone just busting to go out into the field and visit a place. Or just in general, I think astrobiology has its elements in the field. So for anyone who wants to be an astrobiologist, I think it's really, really important, like I mentioned earlier in this presentation today, to kind of get your hands dirty, work in the field, and it's a great team building exercise as well. So we've noted that, and I'll be closely observing and taking note of your responses. I'm expecting this will be open for the next couple of weeks. So hope the others who haven't voted can also continue voting. And it also gives you an idea, it gives us an idea of the numbers of people who are interested to participate in our field workshop. And again, there was the comment section where people had listed out their options, and some of those were mainly doctoral and postdoctoral research opportunities, which I hadn't listed here as well. So just the last few slides, I think in general, it's been such an amazing experience for all of us, for us as instructors, for the first time coming together to deliver a course like this. I just thought I'll highlight the fact that we've touched people all around the world, on all continents except Antarctica. And just the fact that we've done this on our first attempt, I think is really, really humbling for us. The fact that we've been fortunate enough to speak to you, to get the opportunity to speak to you, and hopefully have, even if I think one person, even if they saw 5 minutes of the last 8 weeks of talking, I think we have ticked a box for ourselves, that we have been able to reach out and connect with you. And even if you haven't found time to watch the courses, you still have time. We'll be keeping it open for a few weeks at least. And we'll be keeping the links as well active, so you can go back and do that. And again, I'd like to say that this could not have been possible without all the work that has been selflessly put in by the instructors from Mars Society Australia, Blue Marble Space, Open University UK, and the shout out that we got from NASA Astrobiology program right at the very start, I think really helped us connect with all of you. So it was just such a great experience. I think this is another great slide that I'd like to push again, that we had people from people speaking 36 different languages who were able to put together astrobiology in their own languages. And I should also point out that we have received about 960 glossary entries so far. So I think that's fantastic. It's great to see so many of you who have taken interest and helped us build the astrobiology glossary, and the TAs and all the instructors will be working closely to compile that in the form of a booklet that will be available publicly online for all of you. And of course, I have to give a shout out to the teaching assistants who have done such an amazing job, all of them across time zones, across, through their ongoing, they're all students, through their existing curriculum material. They're so well organized, Google Classroom, all of the questions, all of the assessments, they've always been responsive, answering questions for all the students across time zones. I've seen discussions happening at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. India time. So it's just great to see. And these students are not, unfortunately, getting any credit, academic credit for this. So it's all happening based on their own, their own interests. So hopefully once we have a course in place which students can claim credit for, we'll be in a better position to, academically reimburse them. But as of now, there's no financial or academic reimbursement. Of course, we'll be, I'm going to make sure that they all get good recommendations for all the work that they have done so far, and that will support them in their future studies. So, and of course, thanks again to all my friends across the globe, Jen, Michael, Afshin, Annalie, John, who's not with us today, and Alyssa as well. I think it's been an amazing experience. It has always been, and we're still working. So it's kind of awkward to say formal thank yous to all of you, but I have to, because this course would not have been possible without all the work that you've put in. And lastly, I'd like to say thank you to the Amity Information Technology, the IT cell, Sanjeev, who's been with us throughout, ensuring that all the sessions, there might have been some delays, but I can understand that because Amity is managing a lot of online sessions right now. So I'd like to thank Dr. J.S. Sodhi, who heads the IT at Amity. I'd like to thank Sanjeev and the other IT staff, Kapil. I'd like to thank people at my own campus, starting with our own Honorable Lieutenant General V.K. Sharma, sir, who's the Vice Chancellor of the university, the faculty members at Amity Institute of Biotechnology, Dr. Selvamurthy, sir, who is the head of the Science and Technology Innovation Foundation, and of course, our Honorable Chancellor, Dr. Aseem Chauhan, sir, who has given the vision to have astrobiology established at Amity University. This all could not have been possible, without all of you. So with that, with tears and joys of accomplishment, but also tears because this is going to be our last slide together. It has been great to fly by you. And Dhum Ketu is going to stay with us. He's going to revisit us next year. So he says, see you in 2021. He's going to go off the horizon. But we'll come back and we'll make sure that we are in a position to better serve all the interests of astrobiology for people around the world. And until then, I would request all of you to subscribe to our website. I know many people have, but for those of you who haven't, please do that. And the reason we're asking you to do that is because a lot of our information gets sent out for webinars, online courses, events, field workshops, and things there. And we try to send out a monthly digest as well. So do subscribe to the website and stay posted with all the information. So that's my last slide. And perhaps we have time for some very quick questions, maybe like a few. Let's see how many do we have. All right. Okay, so Bob Durans had reached out to me. Bob, you have a questionnaire where he's interested in understanding social and religious views. I have gone through the questionnaire. It's actually very well thought out. I encourage you to post it on the online forum. We are going to find a way in which people can post things on the forum. It's not sure if it will be on the Google Classroom or elsewhere, but we couldn't endorse it and post it ourselves because it did not have content that overlapped with our astrobiology syllabus. But I encourage you, as soon as that online sharing forum is open, please do post it there, and we'd be happy to have students have a look at it as per their own interest. All right, so next question. Chirag, I've completed my BS biotechnology. I have my own research project. I'm planning to fly to UK. Where can I do? Okay, so I think Michael has explained in detail the options in UK. Arpita asks, is there any way I can apply for masters in astrobiology in India? Not yet. I do know that the Pune University had announced an astrobiology course, but I also know that it is currently held up. So right now, unfortunately, there isn't a place where you can apply for a master's in astrobiology. Perhaps at Amity soon. We're not sure yet ourselves. We are working that out. We might start off with an elective in astrobiology and eventually work towards developing that into a full-fledged 2-year master course. So stay tuned. Until then, I'd say follow your more fundamental passions, whether that's earth sciences, biology, chemistry, geology, and try to specialize and undertake a research project, thesis project in astrobiology. Okay, Biswajit asks, I'm an undergraduate engineer. I want to pursue a career in radio astronomy after completion of engineering. How can I relate this to field? What is this field I can work on near future? What are the engineering challenges I can work on with radio astronomy and astrobiology? I encourage you, Biswajit, to get in touch with Dr. Margarita Safanova at Indian Institute of Astrophysics. Also have a look at their website, and they do have master's programs. And you can get in touch with them. You can talk to them and tell them that you're interested in radio astronomy. I'm guessing you have an astrobiology interest. Yeah, you mentioned that as well. So I think Margarita would be the best person to talk to because she works at the institute. They do a lot of radio astronomy, and they're also doing exoplanet habitability work there. What kind of opportunities exist for food science and technology undergraduate student in Sri Lanka? So I cannot answer for Sri Lanka, but in India, for sure, we do have a few institutions that offer programs for food science and technology. A colleague of mine, Dr. Ravi Kumar Hosmani, he's at Dharwad University. I'll probably just type it out in the chat box. So he has that's an agricultural university where he's actually undertaking research, and his name is Ravi Kumar Hosmani. So get in touch with him. Other than that, there's the Center for Food Research, Food Technology Research in India, CFTRI. I think I might be wrong on the acronym, in Mysore, which is one of the oldest institutions that we have in India on food technology. And I'm sure they'll be open to undergraduate international students as well. And obviously there'll be other opportunities in US and other parts as well. All right, Hitangshi, what kind of fields can marine biologists focus on in astrobiology? Can I get into this field after an MSc in marine biology? Anybody would like to take that question? Marine biologist wanting to get into astrobiology?
No, but I will say, I just typed in the name of a professor at McGill University, and this is in response to WJMVR, Aram Bipola's comment. I actually have an intern who's sort of become a groupie. I've been working with him for 3 years now, and he's a senior in engineering at McGill, and he's been working with my Braille lava cave study. But he also at McGill works on food science and essentially technology for growing plants in space, and is comparing the efficiency of growth with nutritional value, working with, I think this is his advisor there, Mark Lefsrud, and I don't know, I don't know him, but he's in Canada. So anyway, check that out.
Great, thanks, Jen. And I think just to quickly answer on the marine biology part, you can look at hydrothermal vents. I think that's the main source of astrobiology that people are interested in. And I'm guessing you're in India. There's the National Center of Polar and Ocean Research, NCPOR, in Goa, and they regularly organize ocean expeditions, southern Indian Ocean expeditions. And many of those people are in fact working at these hydrothermal vents, these Springfield sites. There's also the National Institute of Oceanography. So I encourage you to look at people who are already working and focusing themselves on hydrothermal vents. There might be other forms of extremophiles that that you might be finding interesting to work at. So look at the people who are interested in extreme environments, working in ocean, sub-ocean, subsurface.
Well, it depends on what you want to do also. I mean, there are people at NASA Ames, for example, who have spent many, many years studying the biome of the International Space Station, or the biome of astronauts' guts, both in space and when they come back to Earth. You know, there depends on what you want to do. And you know, I work with a colleague who does metagenomic analysis. So he's working with mostly with human-oriented biomes, but also does environmental microbiome work too.
So yeah, so I think
yes, there are many opportunities. I think the challenge is to figure out what your interests are, and then what skill sets will help you move in that direction, and maybe get guidance or start looking for opportunities.
Thanks, Jen. Moving on. So another question from Marambi Polo. How can I combine astrobiology and food science, or food technology, food biochemistry, or food chemistry? Oh, that's a great question. Well, you can look at how do you grow plants and foods in space to survive, for humans to survive. That would be one angle. You could also be looking at the extreme environment angle, that how do these organisms survive in extreme extreme environment. But if we're talking about food, I'm guessing the focus is mainly on humans. How do you sustain human populations that are living in these kinds of off-world scenarios? So read about the work that's been happening on the International Space Station. There's several people working on growing food crops in lunar and Mars regoliths. In fact, Rafael Lorero at Blue Marble Space, he's in fact been working on that. So and there's a group called Plant in Space Action Group, which is part of Blue Marble Space as well. So I encourage you to read more and more about that. Dipanshu asks, is it possible for mechanical engineering grads to work in field of astrobiology as well as in some internship? Absolutely. Wherever you have spacecraft, wherever you have rovers, robotics, there's scope for a mechanical engineer to work. In fact, there's a lot of scope because all of this exploration, you might have just recently seen the OSIRIS-REx mission, which went and grabbed a bit of samples from an asteroid. So that was a mechanical engineering feat. How do you do that so far away from Earth in such a reduced gravity environment and collect the samples and bring them back? So think about that and think about similar missions that can be designed.
Sid, I'm just thinking, with the food studies and the research project thing, there's always, you could always join the Mars Society and apply to the Mars Desert Research Station and take a project there. So there was a Cornell food studies project that I was on where the food was absolutely terrible. It was so terrible. It just looked like brown porridge. And that is all we ate for breakfast, lunch and dinner.
Yeah.
And I was on that project for the very first time I went there to the Mars Desert Research Station. But they got very good stats out of that. So they got good data out of it. So you could always, try and find a project and try it. Somewhere like the Mars Society.
Thanks, Annalie. So definitely have a look at the website of the Mars Desert Research Station and similar research stations that are located in Mars analog environments. They have listed the activities that have taken place there as well. Priyanka asks, you have mentioned emailing researchers directly. Is there some advice you can give on the best way to cold contact these researchers for postgraduate opportunities? In my experience, they rarely reply. We've all been through this. We've all faced this when we were students. And there's no two ways around it. You should make sure that your emails are concise, to the point, cordial. They're not demanding in nature. You should have done your research before you write to them to pose your question that is specific, that genuinely demands requires an answer. It's not something that they'll have to send you a link to somewhere else which they can find, unless it's something that you genuinely cannot find. And yeah, you just have to be persistent. Polite and persistent. That's the only way around it. Out of 10 emails, maybe one might reply. In some cases, out of 20, only one might reply, which means you have to send a lot of emails. So you'll have to copy paste and send emails, but just make sure that you change the name before you send your copy paste. We've all made that mistake.
But you're absolutely right, Sid. And also, about being polite and persistent.
Yeah.
And we have all experienced this. But another thing is, gosh, put your ask at the top. So no one, even though you're excited, no one wants to read no one will take the time to read a very, very long email. But if you say right at the top, hi, I'm writing because this is what I'm looking for. And then go into telling about yourself or attach your resume or something, or attach something that might get them interested in you if you can. But if you say blah, 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 and then at the end, I am looking for opportunities, they might not see that. So it's important to have a well-structured email. And if they don't respond, then again, I really find this method of, hi, I sent you an email earlier, I haven't heard back. I hope you'll take a look. Just very, very polite, and just don't be offended. Don't take it personally, because they don't know you. So if they're rude by not answering, it's nothing personal, just that they have other deadlines, or I have other deadlines, or whatever, know.
And right now, with everything happening
usually
online.
If I get a second email, I will respond.
That's true. And right now, with the current COVID scenario, with everything gone online, the number of emails have also increased. So most of the work is actually happening online. Things that would normally happen where you walk across a corridor and talk to a colleague, you have to do that over email with him or her. So that's basically leading to a lot of email buildup in everyone's inboxes. So cut them some slack, but at the same time, just like Jen rightly pointed out, make sure your emails are to the point and clearly write what is it that you're after. And don't attach and send your resumes unless it's been asked for.
Oh, it's not bad to receive it. But another point is sometimes it's opportunities are serendipitous. In other words, you might think of somebody or try to contact somebody and they have nothing. And then if you contact them the next month, they might have some money. And in these projects were research projects where we are funded by government agencies by and large, there's a very big delay between when we have an idea and when we get funding.
Yeah.
So it just has to, there are all these balls moving in space, and you have to just be lucky to have some overlap. So again, so much of this is serendipity, by chance, rather. You have to be prepared and open, as Sid mentioned. I think that's really great, Sid, you mentioned being open to possibilities. But know that the timing may not work, or the timing may work, as Michael mentioned, somewhere else. Or, so just have to be a little flexible. And then who knows where you'll end up. It's pretty exciting.
Thanks, Jen. Another question from Ayushi. I have a background in electronics. Does BMSIS or any other institute offer projects on the instrumentation aspect? Yes, they do. I do not have specifics, but I encourage you to visit I think the last cycle's website is still open to see the available opportunities or the projects.
Yes, they'll probably update the next one in January.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went there today to look, actually, and they have the last cycle information up. But as I mentioned, you could, if you find a Blue Marble scientist whose work looks interesting, you could contact that person directly.
Sure. I mean, I can tell you already, like, I'm planning to list the Lunar Drilling project as a young scientist project next year. So another heads up. So students are interested, do reach out to me and we can try to work something out. How can an aerospace engineering student contribute to this field? Well, I'm an aerospace engineering student, and I think in some small way I am contributing to this field. The way you do that is you work in teams, in interdisciplinary teams. An aerospace engineer comes with a lot of skills that are generic, but also specialized. You're trained in mechanical engineering, a bit of software, dynamics, propulsion, several things. So you have to specialize yourself. You need to specialize in space systems or space engineering. So you transition from being an aeronautical stroke aerospace engineer to a space systems engineer. And then you just focus on what is it that you really want to do, right? If you want to be an engineer that's working on a rover, you focus on the mechanics, the thermal, the software, or the electronics. So you seek those aspects out of your aerospace engineering degree, and then you further strengthen yourself in that area. So you could either be the guidance and navigation control engineer, you could be the thermal engineer. So that's the way you go about it. So you basically focus on systems that work on answering astrobiology related questions. That system could be a rover, it could be an orbiter, it could be a flyby mission, it could be a subsystem that is fitted on any of these things. So it's entirely up to you. How do you, find these different projects and then just develop yourself. If you're someone who's more inclined on the mechanical side, then try to strengthen your structural analysis, your thermal analysis, your fluid analysis. If you're more inclined on the electrical side of aerospace engineering, then you just focus more on the microcontrollers, you focus more on the sensors, the instrumentation. So again, like I said, there's no one answer to this. It's really dependent on what your background is like and what your interests are like. Okay, another question. Is there any way I can study on potentials of foods and crops for space as a postgraduate program or a degree or a research project? I remember, I think, I'm trying to think if there is a program for space foods or space crops. I do know that at University of Florida, they have a program that does this. You'll have to search a little bit more. Nothing.
Check out the McGill guy. Check out the McGill professor.
The McGill professor, the one that Jen mentioned, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Nasrullah asks, I'm from Bangladesh. I can participate in webinar held by ISRO. Can I use Amity University? Yes, you can. So anybody around the world can register us as a nodal organization. That basically puts the responsibility on us to monitor your attendance for this course, which we do. It's quite easy. ISRO has a very nice website for doing that. And if you have completed the course, you all get automated certificates, and then those certificates are distributed by us to you. So we are just enabling, we are facilitating your participation in an already open program. So feel free to do that. That's no problem. Master, okay, Chirag asked, what opportunities of Masters of Astrobiology in Canada? So nothing off the top of my head, but I think this McGill University is in Canada, right, Jen? The one that you mentioned?
Yes, okay. Yeah, it's in Montreal.
Okay, so that's the first place to start. And then otherwise, look at Astrobiology India website. There's a study astrobiology section, and we have some links there as well. Okay, can you please tell me about 2-year MSc Astrobiology degree program? So that's a program that the University of Pune had announced. I was part of the consultation team to develop their courses, but it's not yet it hasn't been announced yet. And there might be similar programs outside of India that you could look into. There are not many that offer an MSc in astrobiology program, but again, look at the Astrobiology India website. I think there should be a few mentioned there. Okay, it was an amazing experience. Course is amazing. Thank you all. Okay, thanks a lot, Nia. Thanks for the feedback. All opportunities for Canada. I think I've answered that. Okay, Venkatesh, how could I initiate astrobiology prototype to start astrobiology experiments in my university? Please suggest me. Make rural students aware of astrobiology. Okay, so I think you're talking about science communication. Look at the available resources. If you have trained yourself well enough, if you have a working understanding of the fundamentals of astrobiology, you might be able to reach out to some of us and put together a small workshop or a course to start with, something maybe like just run over a day or 2 days. And that could be the starting point. I'm not sure what you mean by starting astrobiology experiments. So that's a very general question, Venkatesh. I encourage you to study a little bit more and refine that question and come back to us with what exactly is it that you have in mind. And we'll be happy to help you out. So send us an email once you have got a concrete experiment question in mind.
I just wanted to add that there's a NASA Astrobiology Institute link that shares courses and ideas for experiments. And I had shared this early on in the course before we started the workshop. So it has been documented. It is in the Google Classroom that the TAs put together a document of all the resources instructors have shared. So that link provides multiple videos that you can use for your STEM outreach in astrobiology for rural students. Or you can get some ideas from those videos and put up your own talk if you want to do it, translate it into your own language and whatnot. So it's a really good, helpful resource. It's been put together by NASA Astrobiology Institute. So check that out. It is in the resources in Google Classrooms.
Thanks, Afshin. Teshraj Deepak Kapoor asks, if I work on endophytic microbes in association with plants in my PhD, can I join astrobiology related postdoc? Afshin, did you Afshin or Michael, anyone?
Yeah, so I actually did plant-related microbiology for my PhD. Having now been on the other side of the table and interviewing candidates for posts and that kinds of thing, it is possible to jump from, because microbiology is still relevant to astrobiology. So the fact that you worked with that specific environment, you haven't worked with hot springs or something that you may work on in an astrobiology research group, but you do have a lot of the relevant skills. So what you're looking for in a candidate for any research group is, as you know, because you've just done a PhD, it's good range of scientific skills, references from your PI or other people that you've done research with. Publications always help. I'm a massive hypocrite because it took me ages to publish for my PhD thesis, but having publications and this evidence of being able to write and produce strong scientific content. Our most recent PhD student to join our group did a standard biology undergraduate course and then spent many years working in different conservation and ecology programs. So very removed from astrobiology, but what he showed was a fantastic scientific aptitude and his enthusiasm for the field. And based on the interview, it was so clear that that was the right candidate, even with this jump from a different branch of biology to astrobiology. So it's I wouldn't worry too much about being pigeonholed, because it's you as an entire scientist that you're trying to put yourself across when you're applying for further posts.
Thanks, Michael. Moving on. Bunch of other questions. I'm going to skip a few because many of these questions have kind of been answered, like opportunities in Canada and such. I encourage you to look at the links that have been posted. We cannot give you a comprehensive list because there's so many opportunities, but we just highlighted the ones that are around us in our specific geographical locations. There's a question from Panagiotis. Are there any laboratories in Europe working on growing plants in space? Maybe Michael, do you have anything that come to your mind? I think you're muted.
Yep, sorry, I'm now unmuted. I remember seeing a talk at AbGrad
Mm-hmm.
this year, but the exact details completely escape me. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's
Right,
fine.
and I actually just saw something about this in the last week we had the Mars Society annual meeting.
Yes. Yes.
And I think they're putting all the recorded videos of the conference online. Again, so I would Google Mars Society 2020 and then go from there.
Yeah.
I actually said there's a lot of questions that show a lot of really good interest, but I wanted to just ask you what are, and there's a question about this too, what are the deadlines for contributing to the course? In other words, Analia mentioned a deadline of about 2 weeks from now for the art project. But what about for the glossary and for the analog work? And then after that deadline, what is the deadline for the, presenting or creating that sort of compilation of analog work? And do we need help from our community to help put that together in a, as we iterate toward final form?
That's a great question, Jen. And I think to answer the first question on deadlines, we are extending the deadline, like Annalie pointed out, for the artwork by 2 weeks. We could extend the assessment deadline as well, because I do understand everyone's running their own schedules and they have things going on. So perhaps we can set a common deadline that would go until, let's see, today is the 24th, so 7th or 8th of November. So let's set 8th of November as a deadline, Sunday 8th of November as a deadline for everything. It's the final all-stop shop deadline for assessments, summaries, glossary summaries, and the artwork. And then beyond that, I think all of the instructors, we should have a discussion and discuss what is it that we're taking out of this course and bringing back next year. And maybe we'll be in a position to answer that question after that meeting. Depending on how, I think I would really encourage everyone to go through the responses that the students have sent back. We have about close to 370 people who have responded. No, but 270 people who have responded on the field analog side assessments, and we have about 960 entries. So let's go through all of the responses first, and then have that meeting, and then perhaps we can decide based on our time availability as well as to what is it that we would like to do with all of this information. One thing I can say right now for sure is that the Google Classroom is going to remain live. We will not shut that down. The WhatsApp, the Slack, all of those resources will be on. So I encourage everybody to get on them if they haven't yet, and keep discussing and talking amongst yourselves. So none of that is getting shut down. And we will try to come back with a better way in which students are able to talk amongst themselves. It could be on SagerNet, it could be on an existing platform. So we don't have to create a new platform for that, but just ensure that there's not just a broadcast of information from us to them, but something that's a lot more open for people to kind of really talk amongst themselves. Something like a Facebook group, for example, or similar. So let's have that discussion after we've discussed it amongst ourselves. But one thing I can assure everybody is that you're all part of the family or the first group. So we're all, you're very special to all of us, all 650 of you. We will get to know all of you soon, I'm guessing. But this group is going to remain as it is, and then we'll find ways in which we can interact with you and get back to you on that. So,
well, I see that actually we still have over 100 people still online, and I know you mentioned last time, is the possibility of having everybody turn on their video to take a screenshot.
I explored that, and it's not as straightforward. So we'll have to find ways. Perhaps I can announce that if everybody is inclined, they can send a headshot of themselves, a screen capture of themselves.
Yeah.
And then perhaps we can collect all of them and make a collage out of it. So
good idea.
So Anurup,
that'd be great.
I'll task my TAs as I always. So perhaps we can have another Google form where people can send in their screenshots of their screens, sitting in front of their screens with their artwork or whatever it is that they find special. That Dhumketu, for example. And just your face, your headshot, just the way you're seeing all of the instructors sitting like this. And you can send it to us and we can make a nice collage of that and prepare. I think that'll be exciting. That'll be fun to have with us. So we can do that. I think we've reached 2 hours, so on the dot on the time, and there's still a few questions. So we will try to answer all of the questions offline because there's quite a few interesting questions. So the TAs could please note them down. There will be more information coming out. There will be more questions, I'm sure. So we'll keep having the discussion offline. But yes, that's it. This is going to be the last meeting for this year. We hope to again have a similar meeting next year, and we'll keep you all posted on how things are. So thanks a lot for being with us, and I hope you have a splendid weekend ahead of you, and make the most of the time of 2020 and get the most out of it. So thanks a lot, everyone. Take care. IT could please stop recording.